The Palm Beach Civic Association brings you Studio 33480, delving into key issues impacting all who live or work in the zip code for the unique island of Palm Beach. This program is sponsored by the Fortin Foundation of Florida. And now, our host.
I'm Tim Malloy. This is Studio 33480. Caroline Hirsch, a longtime winter resident of Palm Beach, is without exaggeration a legend in the comedy community. The founder and owner of Caroline's on Broadway in New York, a performing launch pad for dozens of now famous comedians and comedic actors. She's also the founder of the New York Comedy Festival. It's huge. She's a documentary maker, a television producer, a philanthropist, a charity powerhouse. She's an advocate for women in business and a very generous supporter of our military service members, and that's been widely recognized. She has brought laughter to millions of people, and it all started in Brooklyn. Flatbush Brooklyn. When you were a kid, was there something in you that said, I want to do what you ended up doing?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I went to Catholic school in Brooklyn and St. Brendan's, and at 16 I went to see George Carlin though. So when I saw George Carlin, I was underage, and I believe it was in the Village, like the Bitter End or somewhere like that. I can't remember the exact. I think it was the Bitter End, and right. I saw him when I was 16. And George Carlin at that time was creating a whole new genre of comedy called observational humor. And he was kind of the hip guy of that time.
He was the first guy to really do that.
In the late 60s, yeah.
And political, too. I mean, he was going after everybody.
He was, but he was the new breed. Right. If you ask Jerry Seinfeld, where did he get influenced? It was from someone like George Carlin.
So you saw Carlin and you said, some light bulb went off.
Well, I mean, George Carlin, me as a young person, was taken by him. Mm-hmm. So there was something new about how he was phrasing everything. Comedy is honesty, mm-hmm. and George was honest about everything he said. And I think that was a whole refreshing new part of what comedy was about. It wasn't like "take my wife, please" jokes.
Yeah,
it was very different.
It was a Rodney
and he had
Dangerfield.
A new generation that wanted to hear what he had to say.
So you went to Fashion Institute of Technology. FIT.
I went to City College first.
Yeah.
Which was.
But you weren't headed to comedy then. You were still thinking, I'm going to be an academic or I'm going to be something else.
I wanted to go into retail, and I thought that would best fit. After I left City, I went over to FIT, and I thought it was best fit that I go there if I wanted to be in retail, because my father always wanted me to be a teacher, because that was like the good job to have. So.
And you worked at Gimbel's.
I worked at Gimbel's, and I worked there in retail until they closed, and then I wasn't working. So I took some time off because I'd worked since I'm probably 16 years old, all through college. Mm-hmm. So I took time off, and my friends wanted to open up a cabaret. So my friends Carl and Bob wanted to open a cabaret, and we did on 8th Avenue and 26th Street, and they wanted to name it Caroline's. So they said, come, you're not working right now, come with us, we'll have some fun, we'll do this. And I said, oh, it sounds good. So I invested some money with them, mm-hmm. and we opened this club. And it was cabaret, and it wasn't quite kicking in.
Well, cabaret was what? So song and dance and just...
Song and dance, singers, whatever. I mean, I had hired a very prominent jazz singer like Chris Connor at that time. Mm-hmm. And Chris Connor, we did press, she was on the times that we had her there. It was like, we were able to get some draws into the club, but it wasn't enough. So I'm watching Letterman one night, and there's Jay Leno, and I go, that's it. Let's hire Jay. And we
Leno was appearing on Letterman?
Oh, yeah. Letterman was on at 12:30 at night.
His morning afternoon thing?
No, it was right after the morning show, and I was a fan of a lot of people don't know, David Letterman had a 11 o'clock morning show on, or 10 o'clock. And then that went off. Weird time to put him on anyway. But the 12:30 slot on NBC, and Jay was always on there. So we hired Jay. We love Jay. Hired Jay for like 2 weeks at a time. He would do 10 shows a week. Bring his wife Mavis. Yeah. They would be at the bar in front, and we had a wonderful relationship with him. That was followed by Jerry Seinfeld, Richard Belzer, Gary Shandling. Billy Crystal.
We need to expand these a bit. Yeah. So how did they just start? You kept finding them, or they'd wander into the club?
No. I would call. I was kind of familiar with them. It was just like George Carlin. 15, 20 years before. Scouted out their agency, which was a small agency at that time called Spotlight. that people in the industry would know, and they represented Jerry and Jay and a whole bunch of people, and we put them into Caroline.
Was there a common thread in all of them? I mean, they're all very different humorists, but what was it?
No, just young. Just all started this observational humor, very hip stuff. You know, it was just happening. It was the spurt of this whole new comedy movement. As you will find, at that time during the mid '80s, then there were comedy channels that were started. So it was the start of them recognizing that comedy was this fabulous art form that they wanted to be part of.
Right. And the sitcoms were coming along too, or they were evolving? They went from kind of folksy.
In the late 80s, Jerry Seinfeld, he went out to L.A., created this show called Seinfeld. It was called the Seinfeld Chronicles at the time. And I remember watching it. We were all watching it at my club down at the Seaport with the TVs over the bar and watching the first time this went on the air. So at that time, comedians really wanted to have a sitcom.
Yeah.
Because it really made their brand. And of course, Larry David was his partner in crime in writing that.
Let's talk about Larry for a second, because he wandered into your club too, right?
Larry was working there as a stand-up also. This was way before, working on Seinfeld. This was kind of the mid-'80s. And on Sunday night, we used to do a little show at Caroline's. And it was the Larry David show, and Larry would put the show on because he was a writer at that time on Saturday Night Live. And apparently, none of his sketches were ever picked up on Saturday Night Live, if you can believe that. The genius, the comedy genius. So he kind of recreated things and invited the cast over on Sunday nights. So it was kind of a fun night at the club.
So, to the club world, my fictional image is Bogart at Casablanca, but it's not like that. It's a tough business, right? Paint me a picture of what your life would be running Caroline's when it became really big, and I was in New York when it was. Were you at the door?
It was
kicking people out.
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, I was on the phone with agents, trying to decide who to put in the club personally. I used to be there with the answering machine, taking the reservations off the answering machine. I will never forget one day I come into the club, and Stephen Wright had been on Johnny Carson promoting his stay at Caroline's, of doing his week at Caroline's. Well, the machine was off the hook.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't get back to enough people about it. And those were really the fun times of building the club and the reputation that we had.
Are you funny? I know you're dry.
I'm dry. I know what's funny. I kind of like...
How's that work?
By watching so many years of being in an audience and watching people on stage, I've got this uncanny thing about knowing what works. I don't know.
And do you know immediately, or does it take a while?
Well, it took me so long to decipher between... It didn't take me long. It to decipher what's mediocrity and what's fabulous in a person in a stand-up. I mean, there's a lot of mediocrity around.
And what's blue and what's not, and what's...
Blue's okay.
Edgy?
Blue and edgy is good when it's good. Yeah.
Who's the cleanest, best one? That's not a good word, but who?
Jay was always... I got to tell you, Jay is the mensch of the world.
Yeah.
He is such a adoring, sweet man.
Yeah.
You can't believe how darling he is.
Yeah.
I once needed him to do an interview with a reporter, and he said, hey, give me the number. Give me her number. I'll call her right back. And he did.
Wow.
I mean, he's that kind of guy. Just the sweetest.
Unfair question. Is there a female Tiger Woods out there right now, or a male that you're looking at and go, this is the next Jerry, or this is the next so-and-so?
There's a lot of young women that I work with, and it takes a proudness to stay with it.
Right.
Like Nikki Glaser.
Yeah.
Nikki Glaser's the talk right now because she did the roast.
Yeah.
Those roast jokes were fabulous.
Yeah.
I mean, she hit it out of the ballpark on that. And, she's got the making to be that next woman coming up the ranks, following a Chelsea Handler.
Right.
Ali Wong. I mean, Ali Wong is primo. I mean, she's just right there. She has exploded. Here's a woman that will go into Radio City and, sell out 6 shows,
Wow.
In one run.
Wow.
So she's quite on top of her game.
You've made a lot of people laugh over a long period of time, but I want to talk about something very serious you did, and I just looked at it the other night, and I thought it was amazing. The Conspiracy is an animated documentary that delves into the hateful theory that the Jews were trying to take over the world, essentially, but it's based on the story of Alfred Dreyfus, who was a French military guy who was basically called a traitor when he wasn't. It was largely because he's Jewish. Is that a summary, and then it goes on telling a longer tale?
Well, the conspiracy comes from a book that we optioned called A Convenient Hatred, The History of Anti-Semitism, which kind of started in 400 BC up to the present moment. But we didn't know how, well, I realized what was going on in the late, we started that movie in 2018. That movie was put into production in 2018. What we did was we tried to humanize it. These are stories of the Jewish people throughout the centuries and how they've been scapegoats. And this is pretty much how we took Dreyfus, we took Wahlberg, and we took Trotsky. Three different types of Jewish people in Europe at that time, and how they were made scapegoats.
Very well-intentioned, noble people whose...
Scapegoats. And they all had different backgrounds. The French, the German, and the Russian. And we go through there and we show you how this was brought to America through Henry Ford and the CIA. And we go delve into things that maybe we just don't want to know about, we don't want to fess up to. And I'm very proud of that movie. It's very moving. It tells a great story about human beings. And it tells a story about anti-Semitism in the modern age. What we call the modern age is anything after the French Revolution, 1790. So this is where this happened. We go way, way back to 400 BC when other things happened. But this is something that we can relate to because they're human beings that we knew.
And today, is your sense it is in a fraught way even worse than it's been in many years in this country? I mean, I understand the previous decades and centuries, but now are we on the edge in this regard?
Well, now it came to light after October 6th. I've been saying it for a while. And, we had reports of it, and the ADL did reports about all of this, and nobody listened to anything that was going on. And then on October 6th, we found out really how anti-Semitic the whole world is.
Let's go back to, all right, so you're operating a comedy club, but you're also quite, you do good things for people. And I'm close to the military stuff, as you know. And the Bob Woodruff Stand Up for Heroes event you do in New York is incredible. Talk to me about Bob, and then tell me how that evolved, because Bob Woodruff, of course, was the ABC correspondent, severely injured in Iraq.
So, as you know, Bob was the nightly news on ABC, anchor, went over to Iraq to do what they called a stand-up in a tank, and the tank was hit. So him and his producers, cameraman, the producer, and him, they were injured, but Bob... most seriously, where his head was kind of severed. And he was flown to Germany, got the best care in the world, and survived it. So I'm watching this documentary about him one night on ABC, and I said, at the end it said, if you'd like to help the Woodruff Foundation because they want to help veterans. I said, I have an idea. I got in touch with his wife, with Lee, and I said, I have an idea for a big fundraiser for you. And we named it Stand Up for Heroes, which I took the comedy community, put them on stage, we produced it, and from there it went on, and it's going into its 19th year this year. We've raised over $130 million. That's all gone to help all the servicemen from the war in Iraq and Afghanistan.
And the PTSD and the head injuries are unbelievable. I've reported on that, and you are really onto something important, because these are lingering... forever issues for a lot of these people who are home now.
That was our early mission, was a traumatic brain injury. That's where we really started, that and suicides, which now we are seeing, we're seeing it all over.
Yeah, it takes years sometimes for guys to finally, and women, to say, I can't take it anymore.
I'm very proud of that event.
Yeah.
Myself and Andrew Fox produced that, and we're very, very proud of it. You were there. It's very moving. The servicemen love it. Their helpers, everybody that comes with them, they all love it, and it's great. We do makeovers on the women that married to the man, and it's a wonderful event.
And just from the entertainment standpoint, I mean, you would not believe who performed that night. There's Springsteen, Seinfeld. Who else?
Mark Norman.
Oh yeah.
Jim Gaffigan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. It was a great show. And Bruce Springsteen, who tells jokes. That's a long-running thing. He does that every year. So he practices
and
his jokes.
He's not really good at telling a joke, but because he's not good at it, it's funny.
And then he's very blue. Very blue jokes.
Is there hope for the world as far as comedy? How much comedy do we need right now?
As much as you can get.
Yeah.
You know what I'm so amazed? When people hear I'm in the comedy business. They go, oh, we would love to see more comedy down here. We would love to see more comedy. We'd love to see more comedy. So maybe now it's having its movement. You know, it's movement. So
If you go online, there's an awful lot of comedy stuff. Just even
that's
Facebook.
a whole other world. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a whole other world.
All right, so this leads me to the final question. You're down here under the palms part time of the year. Is there Caroline's Club that should be opening somewhere near us right now?
No.
You don't want to do this ever again.
No. I love what I do. You know, possibly more of a festival idea down here,
Oh, that'd be a
like
good
something like we do in New York. You know, in New York, we produce this New York Comedy Festival, which happens in November, when Stand Up for Heroes is our charity kickoff event for the festival. So we do about 300 shows around New York City in 10 days. You know, from the Carnegie Halls to the Beacon to Madison Square Garden to all the smaller clubs around the
So you haven't exactly retired here.
No,
You're
no.
probably busier than you.
Yeah, busy. Yeah, it's busy. It's good busy. You know, fun busy.
Thanks a lot. Really enjoyed
Oh,
it.
my pleasure.
And you're a local, too, so it's going to be good to see you
I'm a
around.
local.
Caroline Hirsch, thank you. I'm Tim Malloy for Studio 33480. We'll see you soon.
Studio 33480 is brought to you by the Palm Beach Civic Association and our sponsor, the Fortin Foundation of Florida. We welcome your thoughts on how our program can best serve our members and residents.